The relentless, echoing silence of my tiny apartment was a constant, sharp reminder of the voice I was no longer allowed to use. I was 45 years old, a man whose entire life had been dedicated to the beautiful, solitary, often grueling pursuit of creative writing and game design. My cramped, isolated life in Providence, Rhode Island, was worlds away from the glittering, high-stakes environment where I had once belonged. For 20 years, I, Ethan Vance, had been the uncredited genius behind Kronos Games, a boutique studio that produced some of the most critically acclaimed independent video games of the last decade. My success was built on narrative complexity, emotional depth, and my revolutionary, adaptive story engine, a proprietary algorithm that allowed game narratives to change organically based on player choice. This engine was my legacy, my intellectual property, and my ticket to profound professional independence. The man who stole that legacy and then humiliated me in front of the entire industry was Dr. Adrian Sterling. Adrian was my partner, my intellectual foil, and the charismatic chief executive officer I brought into my small venture. I was the shy, meticulous creator. Adrian was the public face, the slick negotiator who secured all the initial funding and publisher contracts. He possessed a doctorate in behavioral economics and a political instinct I completely lacked. I trusted him with every line of code, every narrative structure, and every financial detail of our company, believing that our shared creative passion formed an unbreakable bond, destined for global success. The foundation of that trust shattered on the evening of the annual Global Gaming Awards in Los Angeles 3 years ago. Kronos Games was nominated for the prestigious Game of the Year award, a nomination earned entirely by the success of the adaptive story engine. Adrian insisted I stay behind, claiming the public spotlight was too stressful for my reserved nature and that he would represent the company's visionary leadership. I watched the ceremony live-streamed from my small home, overflowing with anticipation and pride. When Kronos Games was announced as the winner, Adrian bounded onto the stage, accepting the trophy with a practiced, arrogant grace. He delivered a 5-minute acceptance speech, eloquently detailing his decade of profound visionary leadership and his innovative technical oversight that created the adaptive story engine. He never once mentioned my name. The final, absolute humiliation came at the very end of his speech. As he held the trophy aloft, Adrian turned directly to the camera, his smile cold and condescending. I must, of course, thank the small, diligent team who handled the implementation. Specifically, my former associate, Ethan Vance. Ethan was a tireless worker, responsible primarily for the initial user interface coding and quality assurance testing, the tedious but necessary work of an implementer. Thank you, Ethan. He betrayed me in front of the world, reducing a decade of singular intellectual achievement to user interface coding and quality assurance testing, smiling as he deliberately and publicly erased my name from my own creation. The audience laughed, a polite, dismissive sound that was far more devastating than any rage. The legal fallout was immediate and absolute. Adrian had secured a massive secret buyout of Kronos Games' intellectual property with a major publisher, structuring the deal to exclude me entirely. He used the public humiliation as cover, circulating a narrative within the industry that I was an unstable, technically limited former associate, whose early naive concepts needed professional rescue from my own erratic business management. He fired me. I lost my home, and my professional identity was vaporized. They mocked me when I fell, but I smiled, a cold, quiet assurance that their arrogance had just sealed their eventual ruin. The descent into professional and personal exile was harsh, a bitter period of forced transformation. The narrative created by Adrian Sterling, the image of the unstable, technically limited implementer, was devastatingly effective. My industry contacts vanished overnight. Publishers who once courted me now politely declined even a conversation, citing concerns over professional volatility and intellectual property clarity. I was financially ruined, forced to liquidate my remaining assets and relocate to a cheap, isolated apartment in Albany, New York, a location chosen purely for its anonymity and distance from the high-stakes gaming world. The shame of being publicly branded as broken and desperate was a constant, debilitating weight. I had lost my fortune, my reputation, and most crushingly, the ownership of my own creative genius. However, the despair was quickly consumed by a cold, surgical focus, a clarity born from the knowledge that Adrian's arrogance had left him fatally exposed. He had stolen the adaptive story engine, but he failed to comprehend its complexity. The core of the code, the proprietary indexing algorithms and the security encryption, was an extension of my own mind, a language I spoke fluently. I realized my most potent weapon wasn't money or legal posturing. It was the unassailable knowledge of a systemic vulnerability I had deliberately embedded deep within the code's operating system years ago. A digital failsafe Adrian was too technically illiterate and arrogant to ever discover. I had built a master diagnostic backdoor into the adaptive story engine, a complex layered maintenance tool invisible to external users, designed to run continuous security checks and maintain a redundant, off-site archive of all original source code and narrative assets. This backdoor was controlled by a specific, unique signature of commands that only I knew. Adrian, in selling the code to the major publisher, MegaCorp Entertainment, had handed them a ticking digital time bomb. The fatal flaw wasn't my instability. It was the potential for massive, untraceable data leaks via my backdoor, a flaw that would expose MegaCorp and Adrian to crippling regulatory violations and catastrophic client loss. My first act of vengeance was to test the backdoor. I used a cheap disposable laptop and a secure, anonymous network to launch a passive diagnostic ping into the MegaCorp servers. The ping confirmed my hypothesis. Adrian had integrated the stolen code into MegaCorp's massive digital network without understanding the necessity of disabling my proprietary backdoor. The entire network, built on the stolen foundation of the adaptive story engine, was secretly accessible to me. I was the silent, invisible master of their entire digital infrastructure. I needed two things to execute the final, absolute destruction: a legitimate legal shield and unquestionable financial backing. I reached out to Dr. Lena Wu, a formidable, nationally recognized intellectual property defense lawyer in San Diego. I didn't send her a desperate plea. I sent a single encrypted digital document, a printout of MegaCorp's active current user list, accessed via an IP address I knew was impossible to breach legally, along with a concise, factual summary of the code's vulnerability and the patent fraud Adrian committed. Lena, a woman who valued evidence above all, was stunned by the proof of my technical access. The initial anonymous communication led to a secure meeting. I presented Lena with the full plan. I would use the back door to prove the system's unreliability and expose the fraud, securing her legal and financial backing. Lena, recognizing the unprecedented power of the evidence, the potential for crippling litigation against a corporate giant, agreed to take my case. The partnership was sealed. The money, the power, and the legal machine Adrian thought would crush me were about to be turned against him. They mocked me when I fell, but I smiled, because I was about to become the unstoppable, ruthless, and free strategic force that would dismantle his entire stolen empire. I know this might just be a voice in your ear, detailing the surgical, slow-motion destruction of a life. But if the sting of intellectual theft or the fight to reclaim your creative genius after being betrayed resonates with your own journey, you belong right here. We are a community built on the bedrock of unyielding evidence, where patience is our most dangerous weapon. Every time you hit that subscribe button, you are casting a vote for strategic precision and the power of the overlooked creator. And please, tell me in the comments below, what's the single most strategic decision you ever made that turned a crushing personal defeat into a powerful future victory? Your stories are the fuel that keeps this channel dedicated to the quiet, victorious battles of truth and transformation. Thank you for being here. The formal agreement with Dr. Lena Wu launched my transition from professional exile to strategic counter-aggressor. Lena didn't treat me as a typical client. She treated me as a master digital operative and the primary technical asset in what she correctly termed a corporate counter-espionage war. Her first step was to secure a massive confidential investment from a consortium of private equity firms and rival publishers, eager for the potentially lucrative fallout from a successful patent invalidation suit against MegaCorp Entertainment. This guaranteed the financial armor I needed to withstand Adrian's inevitable counterattacks and the crippling cost of federal litigation. I was no longer fighting with empty pockets. I was fighting with the war chest of serious corporate players who understood the market value of the unassailable truth I held. My immediate focus was not on filing the lawsuit, but on demonstrating the severity of the vulnerability to the investors and to Lena's legal team. I needed proof that the master backdoor was not just a theoretical flaw, but a clear and present danger to MegaCorp's entire multi-million user base. I spent 3 months running highly focused, passive diagnostic audits through the backdoor I controlled. I wasn't stealing proprietary game assets. I was creating a comprehensive digital vulnerability report, detailing the precise mechanisms by which an external actor, me, could access and compromise MegaCorp's entire user data system, design schematics, and sensitive financial forecasts. I was proving that the company's most valuable asset, its data security, was fundamentally compromised by the stolen code. The report, presented to Lena and the investing consortium, was a devastating piece of digital architecture. It proved that the stolen adaptive story engine code, with my backdoor active, was a fundamental security flaw that violated multiple GDPR, General Data Protection Regulation, and SEC data integrity regulations, guaranteeing massive product liability exposure and international fines. The investors immediately understood the gravity. MegaCorp hadn't bought a product. They had bought a ticking digital bomb, and I held the detonator. Lena's legal strategy was pure genius, targeting the weakest point of MegaCorp and Adrian, the patent validity itself. We filed a massive, complex lawsuit in San Diego federal court for patent fraud, intellectual property theft, and failure to disclose material security flaws. The suit was revolutionary, arguing that the core design patent, filed solely by Adrian Sterling, was invalid because A, it was demonstrably stolen from me, the true inventor, and B, the commercialized version contained a known, concealed security vulnerability that rendered the product commercially dishonest and ethically compromised, a flaw Adrian and MegaCorp failed to disclose. The legal action was designed to force a system-wide collapse, ensuring that every word Adrian spoke on that award stage years ago would come back to haunt him. The intensity of the lawsuit, filed in a jurisdiction favorable to intellectual property protection, sent immediate shockwaves through MegaCorp Entertainment. Adrian's initial reaction to the lawsuit was pure, theatrical contempt, backed by MegaCorp's massive legal team. He launched his most aggressive public defense yet, giving interviews where he painted me as a paranoid, vindictive ex-fiancé, whose claims were delusional fantasies, born of professional failure. The firm's lawyers filed a massive motion to dismiss, relying entirely on the initial successful patent registration and Adrian's false narrative of my instability. This was their critical mistake. They focused on the emotional lie while ignoring the unassailable technical evidence I possessed. The legal battle quickly shifted into the discovery phase, where the strength of my evidence truly shone. Lena and I, using our court-authorized discovery request, forced MegaCorp to submit the entire source code for the adaptive story engine product for secure third-party forensic analysis. I secretly advised the forensic team, guiding them with surgical precision to the exact line of code where the back door was intentionally written, a line that Adrian was too ignorant to ever explain or justify. I was now using the legal system to force Victor to expose the proof of my mastery and his technical illiteracy. The shame of his initial lie, that he was the stabilizing genius, was about to be replaced by the unyielding, documented truth of his fraud. The mandatory forensic analysis of the adaptive story engine source code, conducted by a court-appointed independent security firm, was the moment the digital architecture of Victor's empire began to crumble. The analysis team, following the precise guidance I provided to Lena, immediately isolated the intentional proprietary backdoor I had embedded. Their final report confirmed my claims. The vulnerability was real, demonstrably engineered for unauthorized access, and constituted a fundamental security flaw that invalidated MegaCorp's claims of data integrity. This was the unassailable evidence of patent fraud and failure to disclose a material security risk. The report, once submitted to the San Diego court, shifted the entire legal dynamic from a mere intellectual property dispute into a massive corporate regulatory crisis. The court, presented with the definitive forensic proof, immediately issued an emergency injunction, temporarily suspending the validity of the adaptive story engine patent, pending the final fraud ruling. The news was a financial detonation for MegaCorp Entertainment. Their stock price plummeted, and their major industrial clients, relying on the guarantee of data security, began a catastrophic exodus. Adrian Sterling, the celebrated CEO, was instantly transformed from an asset into an existential liability. The sudden shift in power was absolute, meticulously engineered by the overlooked creator. The collapse of MegaCorp Entertainment was swift and total, fueled by the financial panic and the regulatory threat. Adrian's last vestiges of power evaporated, facing the prospect of total financial annihilation and looming federal charges for patent fraud and securities fraud due to the non-disclosure of the security flaw to investors. MegaCorp's board moved with ruthless speed. They fired Adrian Sterling for gross professional misconduct and material fraud, publicly disassociating themselves from the toxic scandal he created. The very corporate machine he had used to crush me was now consuming him entirely. He was left with no job, no money, and no legal protection, facing the full, terrifying might of the legal and financial system. The final decisive confrontation occurred during the mandatory settlement and asset liquidation conference. This was not a trial, it was a surrender. MegaCorp, having fired Victor, was desperate to mitigate its own financial liability, while Victor was entirely focused on avoiding criminal prosecution. The settlement terms, dictated by Lena and myself, were absolute. MegaCorp would pay me a massive 9-figure financial settlement for damages and patent infringement, and Victor would sign a full, detailed public confession admitting the fraud, the theft, and the malicious intent behind his character assassination. The conference was held in a secure, neutral office in New York. The room was sterile, silent, and heavy with the weight of absolute defeat. Victor walked in, without legal representation, a ghost of his former self. His expensive clothes were ill-fitting. His eyes were empty. He signed the financial documents with a trembling hand, guaranteeing my total financial security and his personal bankruptcy. Lena then left the room, leaving Victor and me alone for the last, necessary reckoning. I slid the public confession, a document detailing every lie, every theft, and every malicious act, across the table. Victor looked at the document, then up at me, his eyes pleading for a final reprieve. "Amelia, please, I've lost everything. I have nothing left. Can't you just let me disappear? Why do you need the public shame? I'm begging you. Just let me have some silence." I looked at him, the man who had robbed me of my purpose and dignity, and delivered my final, unscripted truth. "You needed the public shame, Victor. You spent 3 years lying, smiling, and calling me unstable. You thought I was broken and desperate, but I used the quiet desperation you gave me to become the most formidable opponent you ever faced. You built your house on a lie, and I am the architect who revealed the foundation. You stole my peace. Now, you will pay with your reputation." He picked up the pen, and with a final defeated shudder, signed the full public confession of his total professional ruin. I walked out, leaving him alone in the sterile silence, the true architect of his own spectacular humiliation. Wow, you've stayed with me through the absolute core of this intellectual and emotional war, the meticulous takedown of a powerful man built on a lie. If you felt that immense cold surge of satisfaction when the evidence delivered the final unassailable blow, you know why this story matters. This community is built on the shared belief that integrity and strategic truth will always defeat the smiling lie. If you haven't already, please, take a moment to gently tap that subscribe button and affirm the power of the evidence. And now, my deepest, most heartfelt invitation. We all carry a secret truth about a system or a person that needs to be exposed. Share the single most important lesson you learned about identifying a systemic flaw, whether in a relationship or a business. Your wisdom and authenticity are the foundation of this channel. Also, please suggest any deeply emotional, human-focused themes you want to see explored next. Thank you for being a genuine, authentic part of this fight. The signing of the public confession was the final, non-negotiable moment of triumph. It was the absolute, unrecoverable destruction of Victor Sterling's professional identity. The confession, immediately released by my legal team, became a defining moment in the gaming and tech industry, publicly confirming the massive intellectual property fraud and the malicious intent behind his actions. The public apology and retraction, signed by both Victor and MegaCorp, cleared my name entirely, transforming my former stigma into a badge of unshakable resilience and technical genius. The entire industry watched as the man who had publicly humiliated me was forced to sign his own professional death warrant, My own life began its breathtaking ascent. I was now the sole owner of the adaptive story engine patent, and a multimillionaire, legally vindicated and ethically restored. I used the immediate capital to found Artisan Labs Group, a new technology firm built on the uncompromised principles of my original vision. My focus was not on immediate profit, but on systemic integrity, ensuring the technology was deployed ethically, protecting small creators, and guaranteeing absolute data security. The market response was overwhelming. Clients flocked to the firm, drawn not just by the technology, but by the power of my unassailable ethical brand and the story of my resilience. The disgrace of Victor Sterling became a permanent, structural element of the corporate landscape. The Bar Association's Ethics Committee pursued its own inquiry, swiftly disbarring Victor for his participation in the professional and financial fraud, a parallel investigation Lena had secretly facilitated. He faced total financial ruin from his former investors, who systematically stripped him of every remaining asset. The charismatic CEO was left with the emptiness of his own ambition and the cold reality of a world that had utterly erased him. He became a cautionary ghost, haunting the edges of the financial district, a living symbol of professional malfeasance. I, meanwhile, transformed the trauma into a platform for systemic reform. I used my expertise to develop and teach new mandatory IP ethics and digital security programs for young entrepreneurs, focusing on the critical dangers of internal corruption and intellectual property theft. I made sure that every future generation of business leaders would learn the precise mechanisms of Victor Sterling's failure, ensuring his memory served as a perpetual humiliating deterrent. The full weight of my victory was realized. I had not only regained my invention, but had created a legacy that actively prevented the malice that nearly destroyed me. The subsequent years solidified my new identity as a figure of global intellectual authority and institutional power. Artisan Labs Group became a prestigious independent research and development center dedicated to applying the adaptive story engine ethically, focusing on indie game development and educational software. I didn't return to the high-stakes corporate environment. I built a new world where creative integrity was the only currency. My focus was on systemic correction, using my new financial and intellectual power to prevent the kind of fraudulent activity Victor embodied, ensuring the accessibility of my technology for small creators. I established the Victor Sterling Professional Integrity and Ethics Fund, a major scholarship at his alma mater, NYU Business School, targeting students who demonstrated a profound commitment to ethical IP protection and corporate transparency. The fellowship was named with icy precision after Victor Sterling. The public announcement, handled by my institute, stated that the fellowship was established to honor the painful lessons learned regarding the absolute necessity of ethical leadership in high-stakes technological environments. I did not praise him. I did not condemn him. I simply used his name as a permanent public synonym for the consequences of moral failure. Every year, ambitious, ethical young students would receive funding in his name, dedicating their careers to correcting the very kind of fraud he committed. The fellowship was a living, breathing testament to his professional downfall, ensuring that his legacy was not success, but a perpetual, humiliating reminder of his deceit. Victor, in his exile, was powerless to stop it. He became permanently etched into the public record, not as a business titan, but as the ghost of a fraud, his name repurposed to fund the very ethical standards he had spent his life violating. I had ensured his humiliation was not fleeting, but perpetual. My personal life remained fiercely independent. I had learned the vital difference between shared passion and true loyalty, and I built my new life on the latter. The years of silence had taught me the power of discernment, and I vowed never again to waste my time or my trust on those who valued appearance over honor. I found a profound satisfaction in my work, a sense of purpose that the silent servitude of my engagement had stifled. The years that followed were dedicated to expanding my new ethical legacy. The Artisan Labs Group methodologies became the industry standard for IP security and ethical coding. I had achieved everything I set out to do. My professional honor was restored. My invention was securing the future of ethical game development, and the man who betrayed me was paying the full price for his malice. My life was defined by my own making, not by his attempts to destroy it. I often spoke publicly, using my story not as a tale of victimhood, but as a blueprint for strategic resilience. I taught young creators and entrepreneurs that when faced with betrayal, The most powerful weapon is not rage, but unassailable, objective evidence. Victor Sterling thought I was broken, but I had simply used the time of my exile to become a superior version of myself, a strategist who understood the deep, terrifying consequences of moral compromise. The final act of professional reclamation was the public launch of the Artisan Core open-source initiative. I released a non-proprietary version of the adaptive story engine's core logic to the public, ensuring that the technology, once monopolized by greed, was now democratized for small creators, the very people Victor despised. This was the ultimate contradiction of his entire professional philosophy, a final, powerful repudiation of his market aggression. Victor Sterling, stripped of his credentials, his reputation, and his financial stability, faced a quiet, humiliating ruin. He was convicted of securities fraud related to the Omnitech deal and sentenced to a term of 3 years in federal prison and ordered to pay massive restitution, the legal consequence of his greed and the digital lie he thought I could never expose. His empire was completely dismantled, and every asset he acquired through his fraudulent scheme was liquidated for restitution. The man who betrayed me in front of the world was now facing the absolute loss of his freedom and his wealth. The relentless, methodical nature of my revenge was complete. The legal system had served the truth, and the financial restitution ensured the completion of my purpose. I was now free to focus entirely on my life's true work, unburdened by his shadow. I had transformed the darkest period of my life into the foundation of a greater, more meaningful legacy. The shame was gone, replaced by the unshakable certainty of my self-worth. I often held private seminars for my fellowship recipients, the students funded by the Victor Sterling Fund. I would use his case study as the core curriculum, detailing the exact lines of code he failed to understand, the precise legal errors he committed, and the catastrophic ethical choice he made on that award stage. I never spoke with malice. I spoke with clinical detachment, turning his life into a perfect, undeniable lesson in failure. The memory of Victor faded into the backdrop of my massive professional success. My legacy was no longer the fate of a single studio. It was the integrity of the entire digital creative process. I had proven that the quiet creator, the one who understands the blueprint, is always the most formidable opponent. I received one final, profound piece of correspondence exactly 3 years into Victor Sterling's prison sentence. It was a formal notification from his attorney, a routine document detailing the liquidation of his final personal retirement accounts to meet the restitution order. Tucked into the envelope, however, was a small, unmarked piece of paper, a handwritten note, utterly devoid of the old charm, replaced by a defeated emptiness. Amelia, I saw the announcement for the fellowship. You won. The truth won. I hope you realize what you did. You didn't just rebuild your life. You used my name to remind the world of my shame. I don't beg for forgiveness. I just acknowledge the finality. I have nothing left. I looked at the note and felt a profound, cold detachment. He wasn't begging for mercy. He was confirming the complete, permanent success of my vengeance. He was confessing that the memory of my unyielding truth was his eternal punishment. He was hiding from the truth he had once created, and I was the one who had engineered his total exile. The shame was gone, replaced by the unshakable certainty of my self-worth. My life today is proof that the greatest professional successes can be born from the deepest personal betrayals. I stand here, not as the discarded partner, but as Amelia Hayes, the CEO of Hayes Design Labs, the strategist who dismantled a fraudulent technology empire. Victor Sterling stole my code, my future, and my peace, believing I was an insignificant shadow. He thought I was broken and finished. He was simply blind to the quiet, analytical strength that underpinned his entire success. I used the map of his professional vulnerabilities, the back door I managed, to orchestrate a total, legal, and public humiliation. I forced his name to be synonymous with patent fraud, seized his most prized asset, and permanently cemented his legacy as a cautionary tale through the Victor Sterling Transparency and Ethics Fellowship. They called me weak, desperate, and broken. Now they call me unstoppable, ruthless, and free. The ultimate victory is not the money or the title, but the unshakable peace that comes from knowing you survived complete destruction and rebuilt a life based on a bedrock of unassailable integrity. He promised me forever and gave me nothing, so I made sure his forever ended in humiliation and the perpetual preservation of his shame. The years that followed were marked by the flourishing of my purposeful life. Hayes Design Labs expanded its practice into global manufacturing consulting, advising international bodies on ethical sourcing and IP protection, a final, ironic completion of the circle, ensuring that the system Victor corrupted now worked to enforce integrity. I had successfully transformed my personal trauma into systemic reform. I often held quiet evenings on the terrace of my new home, reflecting on the profound shift in my life. The shame was gone, replaced by the unshakable certainty of my self-worth. I realized that Victor had, in his malice, given me the greatest gift, the clarity and the impetus to find my true strength. He thought I was a quiet, predictable partner. He was wrong. I was a professional strategist with the patience to wait for the perfect moment of exposure. I received a single, final piece of correspondence concerning Victor years later. It was a formal notification from a small, low-profile bankruptcy court. Victor Sterling had finally filed for complete personal bankruptcy, stripping him of the final, residual assets he had managed to hide. His ruin was not just professional or social. It was absolute financial oblivion. He was left with nothing, exactly what he had tried to leave me. I looked at the document, and I felt nothing but quiet, immense peace. I did not celebrate his final ruin. I simply acknowledged the end of the narrative. I had won the war, reclaimed my life, and built a legacy of integrity far stronger and more resilient than the lie he had constructed. The shame was gone, replaced by the unshakable certainty of my self-worth. The final, definitive act of my vindication came with the creation of the Victor Sterling Transparency and Ethics Fellowship. I used a significant portion of the Hamptons estate sale proceeds to establish a major, endowed scholarship at the University Engineering School, specifically targeting students dedicated to ethical IP protection and corporate transparency. The fellowship was named, with icy precision, after Victor Sterling. The press release, handled by my own firm, stated simply that the fellowship was established to honor the painful lessons of integrity learned during a significant professional period in Mr. Sterling's life. The move was brilliant in its subtlety and devastating in its finality. I did not praise him. I did not condemn him. I simply used his name as a permanent public synonym for the consequences of corporate malfeasance. Every year, ambitious, ethical young students would receive funding in his name, dedicating their careers to correcting the very kind of fraud he committed. The fellowship was a living, breathing testament to his professional downfall, ensuring that his legacy was not success, but a cautionary tale of absolute moral failure. Victor, operating somewhere in obscurity, tried one final, desperate act of sabotage. He sent an aggressive cease-and-desist letter to the university and the press, demanding that his name be removed from the fellowship, claiming the association was malicious and defamatory. The response was clinical and crushing. My lawyer simply cited the public record of his disbarment, the SEC allegations, and the divorce settlement, confirming the context of the painful lessons the fellowship honored. The university, eager for the positive publicity and the significant endowment, refused to back down. Victor, legally and financially neutered, was powerless. The man who had promised me forever was now permanently etched into the public record not as a business titan, but as the ghost of a fraud, his name repurposed to fund the very ethical standards he had spent his life violating. I had ensured his humiliation was not fleeting, but perpetual. My life today is proof that the greatest professional successes can be born from the deepest personal betrayals. I stand here, not as the discarded partner, but as Amelia Hayes, the CEO of Hayes Design Labs, the strategist who dismantled a fraudulent technology empire. Victor Sterling stole my code, my future, and my peace, believing I was an insignificant shadow. He thought I was broken and finished. He was simply blind to the quiet, analytical strength that underpinned his entire success. I used the map of his professional vulnerabilities, the backdoor I managed, to orchestrate a total, legal, and public humiliation. I forced his name to be synonymous with patent fraud, seized his most prized asset, and permanently cemented his legacy as a cautionary tale through the Victor Sterling Transparency and Ethics Fellowship. They called me weak, desperate, and broken. Now they call me unstoppable, ruthless, and free. The ultimate victory is not the money or the title, but the unshakable peace that comes from knowing you survived complete destruction and rebuilt a life based on a bedrock of unassailable integrity. He promised me forever and gave me nothing. So I made sure his forever ended in humiliation and the perpetual preservation of his shame. The years that followed were marked by the total professional and social isolation of Victor Sterling. He attempted to launch several failed ventures, only to be shut down by ethical warnings issued by the very regulatory bodies I had quietly influenced. The court systematically stripped him of his remaining assets, ensuring his financial annihilation was complete. He was not just broke, he was unemployable and uncreditworthy, a man without a country in the world he once ruled. The coldness of his fate was a precise reflection of the coldness with which he had discarded me. I, meanwhile, was at the height of my professional power. I often lectured at the very engineering school that hosted the Victor Sterling Fellowship, using the cautionary details of his case to teach advanced ethics and IP defense. I never referred to him as my former partner, only as the individual who demonstrated a catastrophic failure of character. The irony was delicious and total. I had come back as everything he could never be, ethically unassailable, genuinely respected, and independently powerful. The final financial act of my redemption came with the public sale of the Hamptons estate, the last asset Victor had fiercely and unsuccessfully fought to protect in the patent battle. The sale was highly publicized, the proceeds channeled into the expansion of Hayes Design Labs and the Ethics Fellowship. The physical symbol of his fraudulent success was finally, completely converted into the engine of my new future. I received one final, profound piece of correspondence concerning Victor years later. It was a formal notification from a low-profile bankruptcy court. Victor Sterling had finally filed for complete personal bankruptcy, stripping him of the final residual assets he had managed to hide. His ruin was not just professional or social, it was absolute financial oblivion. He was left with nothing, exactly what he had tried to leave me. I looked at the document, and I felt nothing but quiet, immense peace. I did not celebrate his final ruin. I simply acknowledged the end of the narrative. I had won the war, reclaimed my life, and built a legacy of integrity far stronger and more resilient than the lie he had constructed. The years that followed were marked by the flourishing of my purposeful life. Hayes Design Labs expanded its practice into global manufacturing consulting, advising international bodies on ethical sourcing and IP protection. A final, ironic completion of the circle, ensuring that the system Victor corrupted now worked to enforce integrity. I had successfully transformed my personal trauma into systemic reform. I often held quiet evenings on the terrace of my new home, reflecting on the profound shift in my life. The shame was gone, replaced by the unshakable certainty of my self-worth. I realized that Victor had, in his malice, given me the greatest gift, the clarity, and the impetus to find my true strength. He thought I was a quiet, predictable partner. He was wrong. I was a professional strategist with the patience to wait for the perfect moment of exposure. I received a single, final piece of correspondence concerning Victor years later. It was a formal notification from a small, low-profile bankruptcy court. Victor Sterling had finally filed for complete, personal bankruptcy, stripping him of the final, residual assets he had managed to hide. His ruin was not just professional or social. It was absolute financial oblivion. He was left with nothing, exactly what he had tried to leave me. I looked at the document, and I felt nothing but quiet, immense peace. I did not celebrate his final ruin. I simply acknowledged the end of the narrative. I had won the war, reclaimed my life, and built a legacy of integrity far stronger and more resilient than the lie he had constructed. The shame was gone, replaced by the unshakable certainty of my self-worth. The final, definitive act of my vindication came with the creation of the Victor Sterling Transparency and Ethics Fellowship. I used a significant portion of the Hamptons estate sale proceeds to establish a major, endowed scholarship at the University Engineering School, specifically targeting students dedicated to ethical IP protection and corporate transparency. The fellowship was named with icy precision after Victor Sterling. The press release, handled by my own firm, stated simply that the fellowship was established to honor the painful lessons of integrity learned during a significant professional period in Mr. Sterling's life. The move was brilliant in its subtlety and devastating in its finality. I did not praise him. I did not condemn him. I simply used his name as a permanent public synonym for the consequences of corporate malfeasance. Every year, ambitious, ethical young students would receive funding in his name, dedicating their careers to correcting the very kind of fraud he committed. The fellowship was a living, breathing testament to his professional downfall, ensuring that his legacy was not success, but a cautionary tale of absolute moral failure. Victor, operating somewhere in obscurity, tried one final, desperate act of sabotage. He sent an aggressive cease and desist letter to the university and the press, demanding that his name be removed from the fellowship, claiming the association was malicious and defamatory. The response was clinical and crushing. My lawyer simply cited the public record of his disbarment, the SEC allegations, and the divorce settlement, confirming the context of the painful lessons the fellowship honored. The university, eager for the positive publicity and the significant endowment, refused to back down. Victor, legally and financially neutered, was powerless. The man who had promised me forever was now permanently etched into the public record not as a business titan, but as the ghost of a fraud, his name repurposed to fund the very ethical standards he had spent his life violating. I had ensured his humiliation was not fleeting, but perpetual.